Welcome back to Time Monk Radio. You are listening to Part 10 of the 7 Medicines the Wise Woman Way with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio. Hello, Susan. Welcome back to Time Monk Radio.
Hi, Gemini. Really interesting things that you were telling us when we said goodbye last week about auras.
Yes.
And auras and auric medicine is certainly in this third medicine, the energy medicine. As a matter of fact, some people think that the aura is like the representation of the energy of the person.
Yes.
So that you would think of that too, that the aura is like our way of kind of seeing or feeling the energy around living things.
That's how I understand it, and that's how I feel it as well.
And that is all living things for you.
Yes.
Yeah. I know, certainly I've, been with people who, as you said last week, get a little like skittish when you talk about, well, the auras of plants. And they're like, oh, no, this is just a human thing. But then many other people certainly recognize auras around their animals.
Yes, definitely.
Right, as well as around plants. Now, my grandma Twyla Nitch, who adopted me into the Wolf Clan of the Seneca Nation, also maintained that rocks have auras.
That what?
Rocks have auras.
Yes. I agree with that, yes.
All right. Usually, so as not to disturb too many people, I say living things, but, those rocks, grandmother said, she said, they're living. I say, that's an inanimate object. She said, it just moves slower than you do.
Yes, I believe that to be true as well. And if you've ever held a rock, you would feel it when you tune into it, whether it's a golden jasper or a crystal or a piece of granite. It feels wonderful.
Yes, that there is actually something that we can engage with. There's that skeptic and a wise skeptic, and all of us that says, excuse me, Gemini, Susan, would you get back to ground here? All right, what are we talking about? Well, gang, we are talking about the third medicine, and it may seem a little airy-fairy to you, but believe me, it's not. Have you ever seen a way to measure the aura or the energy around the body?
For me, that's difficult because I feel it more than I see it. It's hard for me to describe. It's the strength of it is what I'm feeling, and the heat of it, if that makes sense.
It does. I've seen at health expos machines. Have you seen the aura machines?
I have not.
And it's a pad, and you put your hand on the pad, and then there's a computer screen. And it reads the electromagnetic frequencies coming off your body and translates them into color.
I've not been part of that. No, that's interesting.
Yes, I'm not so sure that it's as useful as what you do. And that goes back to that word that I love and that I've been pulling out every opportunity here for last week and this week, which is engage. We are not twirling the energy around our little finger. We're not saying, energy, go over here. We're not in charge of the energy. We are engaging with the energy. So what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that when you are experiencing someone's aura, it's not like a computer readout. It's like touching someone.
Yes, very much so.
It's an exchange. When we touch someone, there's an exchange, all the way from the slight exchange of of whatever's on our skin to the exchange of energy. And when we are working with these kinds of energy, it is sometimes called hand healing. And this is kind of an old term. I first met up with it in the Deep South among people who had a very intense relationship with their religion and with spirit, and who took Jesus' words literally. And I'm not necessarily saying that we shouldn't. The words that they took literally are, Jesus says, all these miracles that I do, you can do them too. And so I have met a great many hand healers all over the world who quote this passage and say, I simply asked to be allowed to do what the Bible tells me I can do, which is to heal other people simply by touching them. Is that something you've heard of, Gemini?
I've heard of it, yes.
How do you think that that relates or doesn't to working with auras?
Well, that hasn't been my experience. I don't find that I heal people, but I can assist them in engaging, as you call it, their own energy, or allowing the flow of their own energy, or putting them in touch with what that feels like.
And each time we take the time to really ask the person who's doing this, I think it does come back to exactly what you're saying, which is, oh, no. I would not get in there and control that energy. I'm just engaging it and saying, if you like, step this way. And so the hand healer of today might say they're doing Reiki, yeah?
Yes.
So Reiki, again, has this more kind of ordinary, if I can say that about Reiki, about working with energy, it has a more ordinary cast to it, because we don't have to use the word aura. We're not saying, I'm an aura healer, I'm going to work with your aura. No. We don't have to do any of that. We say, I do Reiki. It's a foreign word, so people can kind of make up what it is that people do. But they know that somehow it's working with energy. And if you ask Reiki practitioners, and I have asked many of them, what they say in many different ways of saying it is, the energy that I am working with is not my energy. I am an opening to the energy. I am a conduit through which this energy may pass. I am part of the energy. The person that I am doing Reiki for is part of the energy. Does this sound like the spell we just talked about? And there is a connection between us that brings about the greatest good. So when doing a Reiki session, the practitioner doesn't say, I am going to heal you, I'm going to make you better. The practitioner says, I now become the way that this healing life force energy can move through the universe to you, for you to make use of in your own healing, growth, transformation. This sounds to me like what you're saying, too.
Yes, quite a bit. The only thing that I would add to the Reiki, and I've met many Reiki practitioners as well, is that the hand movements aren't comfortable for me. To me, it's more natural than that, than specific things. I think energy can't be boxed like that. That's just my opinion.
And it's interesting to kind of, see, again, in the shaman's playground, anything can be played with.
Yes.
So we can go to India and we can find mudras, right? Which, again, are these ways of holding your hand. That certain fingers are pressed together in the mudra. And we could say, if we looked at an acupuncture chart, well, that brings this acupuncture point and this acupuncture point in contact. And so the energy now runs not just through that meridian, but through that meridian and then back up through this other meridian.
Yes.
Yeah. So they are, I agree with you, they are a kind of, my friend Patch Adams is saying, they're big red nose. And sometimes you need a big red nose to clown around. Right, and he styles himself, and he certainly is the clown shaman. And so it can be any of those things. It can be weird hand movements. And is it the hand movement that does it or doesn't it? No. What we're really, really talking about here is not any of these specific things. It's not the hands. It's not the initiation into the Reiki level. It's not the miracle healing. It's our own ability to make active choices in our lives, but that we often need a little assistance in doing that. We need to make it more real. And that's where the shaman comes in. The shaman says, you want it real? Let's stick some feathers in it. You want it real? Let's give it a chance. Let's give it funny hands, right? So this is going to make it more real to us. Take it out of that kind of, this is all in my mind. All in my mind. And there's a kind of scary chant, isn't it? Yes. All in my mind. It's not real. It's all in my mind. And when I was in like 6th or 7th grade, I wrote a term paper on ESP, extrasensory perception, and work that was going on then in the 50s, trying to establish whether or not there really is ESP, although nobody calls it that anymore. And have we come to a definitive answer?
I don't think we have. I think it's still part of that scientific debate.
It is indeed, isn't it? Nobody has really quite been able to put their finger on it, and the people who are doing it say, you will never be able to put your finger on it.
Yes.
We understand you want to put your finger on it, but it's kind of like saying, smash, I got the butterfly. You are not going to know anything at all about butterflyness from your smashed butterfly. The very nature and essence of energy is that it constantly changes, that it is different from moment to moment, and that in order to engage it, one must become more fluid and more flowing and more sensitive. Would you say that those things characterize the work you do with auras?
Yes, definitely.
And we gain when we become more fluid and more flowing.
Yes.
So even if all the things we're talking about in the third river of healing are all a bunch of boodle-doodle, we still gain. And this is what's fascinating to me about energy medicine. It doesn't have to be true to work. If you see feel or sense someone's aura, and you can give them information that's helpful to them based on what you've sensed and felt. And that is not something that either of you are doing for any wicked end. Then we have to say it doesn't really matter if it was true or not, right?
Correct. And when it's something that comes so naturally and it can't be defined or caged, it's even more difficult to explain. It just happens.
Yes. Yes, we can make room for it. As one of my teachers said, you can put out bait, but you can only do that. You can't insist. You can't control. Perhaps we might think we are, but in the long run, we would see, no, that isn't exactly what it is we've been doing. One of the things that is very interesting to me about people who do hand healing, to get back to that, and it's different than Reiki, because people, especially who live in communities where there are hand healers, and often they are certain specific things that the hand healer can do and are passed in families. So there are hand healers who are bone setters. There are hand healers who deal with people who've been burned. There are hand healers who can close wounds. There are hand healers for venomous bites. So it's rather like today's modern medical specialist. Right? You break a bone, you don't go to the hand healer who deals with venomous bites. It's not one size fits all. It's, this is what I do. And this is how I do it. And we mentioned last week when we were talking that in the third medicine, we have come to the place of miracles and to the place where we can be free enough and flowing enough and open enough to allow that miracle to move through us. Now, science has certainly not stopped trying to figure out what's going on and talking about it. And for many years, because we talk about it as energy, science very much was looking for an energy, a measurable energy. And that has not been richly rewarding. So science has started to look elsewhere. And the brain has become a fascinating place to look. And one of the things that we are finding is that when people change their beliefs, then the hormones that are made in the brain that control what's going on in the brain change. That when we say, I changed my mind, we really, literally mean it. And it's a feedback loop. I believe X, my brain makes A, B, and C hormones. And those hormones cause me to act in ways that X is what I get. I believe Y, my brain makes E, F, and G hormones that cause me to get Y and not X. And we've actually had a few situations now where we have had people who were able to find a way to reverse and eliminate their late-stage metastatic cancer, where we have been able to have them cooperate to give brain scans, and we can see as they make this change in their belief, the changes following along, cascading along in their brains, in the biochemical, electrical matrix that is the brain. So maybe when you say, Gemini, I don't really see it, and when I say, yeah, most people don't really see it, it's more of a proprioceptive sense. It's kind of like the way that we know where our body is. Maybe, in fact, we're not even far out enough. Maybe we smell something different.
Yes, that could very well be.
Right? And we translate it into culturally acceptable terms.
I think that's why it's so difficult to put into words.
Yes. I was reminded in reading an article about helping people who have post-traumatic stress disorder that their disorder lies in a place where there aren't words.
That makes sense.
Yes, that in fact, if you talk to someone experiencing this, you might re-traumatize them. The article was suggesting and talking about ways that are being found to actually go into what we're here talking about as the energy or the belief system or the choices that a person has made in their lives. This is certainly also a kind of language that many of my teachers have used, and they have said, but what's really important here is choice. You are choosing what you wish to experience in your one unique and precious life. And the shaman's playground helps us to focus in on the fact that I am the decision maker. Now, this comes perilously close to saying you're sick because you did something wrong, blaming the victim, and we do not at all want to go there. This is not what we're saying at all. In fact, to truly understand the shaman's playground, we need to give up blame and shame and guilt. To leave these things behind and to move into that playground of free will choice. Each and everything that comes into my unique and precious life is my choice, and I am eternally grateful for it. How different our lives would be if it wasn't just words that I said now and then, but something that was there in every breath. It's good that we say the words now and then, because it helps us remember. It helps us remember choice and belief and attitude. One of the things that I like to talk about when I'm talking about how much power there is in our belief system is the man in Japan who does the interesting things with water and crystals. And as I understand it, what he does is he takes water and he writes a word on the container of the water, and then the water, or a small part of the water, is frozen, and the ice crystals are examined. And he demonstrates quite amply, many people believe, but I'm certainly not arguing with them, that different words on the water actually cause different ice crystals to appear. You can see the difference in these ice crystals. And he says, I'm using the same water. I think he's using distilled water. He's not using some very pure water. So he's quite sure this is not an artifact of different waters and that it's all going in the same freezer. So he's holding all things that he can possibly hold constant to a constant and doing his best to do just with the word. However, as we all know, and I do believe that he is using English words, which are letters. Those letters can be used to form any number of words which can have an infinite variety of meanings. So the fact that there is a word written on a bottle or written on a piece of paper and put on a bottle does not necessarily mean that that word itself has any influence or effect. But what I'm saying is the belief does. What I'm actually saying, I think, is even like more whoa than what he's doing, which is that it's not the word he's writing on the bottle, it's his belief in that word. He believes that if he writes a nice word, a pretty word, a word that talks about something lovely, that it will make a lovely ice crystal, and that if he writes an ugly word, a mean word, a word we don't want to have to think about, that it will make a broken or distorted ice crystal. And he has the results to show us that something is indeed going on. What? That indeed is very hard to say, isn't it? Do you remember muscle testing?
Yes, I do.
I don't know if it's still being used. Maybe it's still au courant, but certainly back in the 70s and the 80s and even into the 90s, muscle testing was a big thing. And a lot of alternative practitioners would use muscle testing. So you might go to a chiropractor, right, and they would muscle test you to see, what they should do. And I used to love to play around with this, especially when I'm teaching about this third river, mind medicine, so that people can see how important belief is. So the way that I would play around with this is I would get somebody from the audience to come up, and I would have a bag of sugar. And I would say to them, what do you think about white sugar? And I would say, what do you think about this white sugar? And they would say something on the order of terrible, poisonous, oh my gosh, take that away, never touch the stuff. Because usually I was teaching two groups of people who were involved in being healthy. So they were all, even kind of like, rosy-cheeked at even looking at a bag of raw sugar. Goodness only knows when the last time they'd seen that was. So I then asked them to hold their arm out and to do a baseline muscle test so we could get a sense of what kind of pressure I needed to exert and how strong they were. And then I asked them to hold this 5-pound bag of white sugar, and then I muscle tested them. Well, now, what do we think happened? If we know muscle testing, we know that if a substance we are holding makes us strong, then when the tester pushes on our arm, we're strong, right? And if the substance we're holding makes us weak, then when the muscle tester pushes on our arm, the arm totally collapses. You're right. Their arm would totally collapse. Bloop, like a limp noodle. Oh, yeah, that white sugar, it's so bad for me. And I'd say, now let's try this again. And I turned to the larger audience and I would say, I think white sugar is a miracle food. I think white sugar is going to make this person incredibly strong and incredibly healthy, and that it is absolutely the very, 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 very best thing for them. And then I would walk around, they're still holding the bag of sugar, and press on their arm, and press on their arm, and press on their arm, and they're looking at me and going, how can that be? How can that be? And I said, because the muscle testing isn't testing a substance, it's testing a belief, and it's not even testing the belief of the testee. It's testing the belief system of the tester. And the testee is responding in the way the tester wants them to respond. The third river, mind medicine. What did I say last week? Woo-hoo! Susan and Gemini, Earth's calling. We're not getting too far out in the stratosphere here, folks. But this is energy medicine. It works, and it needs to be included in our 6 steps of healing, our 7 medicines. When we come back next week, we're going to be talking about placebos. So thank you so much for being with us this week. And remember that herbal medicine is a medicine that grows right outside your door. It's people's medicine. Green blessings, everybody.
And thank you for another wonderful conversation, Susan. This concludes part 10 of our discussion of the 7 medicines, the Wise Woman Way, with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio.